Hi, everyone. Welcome to our spiritual lecture. And we have these lectures every Friday, every first Friday of the month. We thank you for following, watching, and supporting us. But please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on the notifications so you will know when we start our broadcasts. And please enjoy, if you enjoy our content, press like and share with your friends. Tonight we have Flavio Zanetti talking about the Spiritist view of God. Flavio is an avid Spiritist student and a dedicated work of the Spiritist movement in the US and abroad. Since '99, he has worked in different positions of the Allan Kardec Spirit Society of Massachusetts. He has acted as the program director of the United States Spiritist Federation, helping organizations across the country for better and to promote Spiritism. He has also helped to create the Spiritist Institute, a non-profit organization dedicated to advance the awareness, study, and practice of Spiritism in English-speaking world. He also possesses a great translational skills. He translates books, articles, course materials for the Spiritist magazine, and translates lectures and Spiritist events. Lastly, he has contributed to the General Secretary as a General Secretary for the Spiritist Family Retreat since its inception a decade ago. Flavio has spoken about Spiritism in many countries around the globe. Professionally, he is an engineer manager. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Engineer, a Bachelor of Arts in Sociology, and a Master's in Business. So now, before we move to Flavio, we'll read a message from this book called Happy Life from Joana de Angelis and Divaldo Pereira Franco. Message number 17 or 19. Show kindness and gratitude to all, especially the elderly. Old age is an inevitable stage of your that you too will reach should death not claim your body sooner. During this difficult phase, strength diminishes, organs weaken, memory fades, and physical and emotional dependency sets in. The presence of an elderly may be worrisome. However, they have a wealth of experience to offer in return for your resource you can provide. And with that, we'd like to invite you to unite us all in thoughts and elevate our thoughts to our Creator and our Master Jesus. First, saying thanks for this opportunity that we are here tonight to hear about Spiritism and about God's laws. We thank also the benefactors of this Spiritist Center who protect us all. And we ask our Master Jesus to enlighten our friend Flavio so he can speak and be an intermediate, bringing to us the wisdom and the consolation of this fantastic philosophy. So, without further ado, we invite our friend Flavio, who will then speak to us about the Spiritist view of God. Hey Flavio, how are you? Everything all right with you? You're
I'm
mute.
well, Mark. So how are you? My mic
Um,
was muted.
yeah,
Yes.
that's totally fine. We can hear you loud and clear now.
Awesome.
So
Awesome.
please take us away.
All right. Thank you, Mark. So thank you so much for the great introduction. Thank you all, folks that are following us from different parts of the world. Those who are following us live, good evening. For those of us that are following, good evening, Solange. Right. For those of us that are following us from later on, they're gonna watch this recorded later on. Good morning or good afternoon. It's a pleasure once again to spend a few minutes with all of you guys. It's great, right? It's great to be here. Before we actually start, would like to maintain, really keep our thoughts elevated, really keep our thoughts within our master, our professor, Jesus, who is not only by our side, but he's with us at every step of the way. He never abandons us. He's always with us. And with this particular initiative that we have, we asked him that he may stay with us. He may really bring our hearts at peace. He may enlighten our minds so we can really understand and comprehend the teachings, what we're going to be talking about tonight, the best way as possible, with the same determination, with the same dedication that which we used, right, to put that together, right? So thank you once again for the invitation, Marcio, and let's get going here, right? So let's flush one slide that can really highlight what are we going to be talking about tonight, right? So what is the importance? Why is it important to study God, right? I mean, if you were to ask the question, right, why is it so important for us to understand, right, the concepts of God? Well, first of all, every major religion, right, many philosophies, ideologies, they all talk about a God. They all talk about a creator. They all talk about a deity, a father, right? Something that's beyond man's or humankind's comprehension, to the point that this is a picture, right, that I'd like to highlight, where the man, right, is really touching the finger of God. And if you look carefully in this image, right, if you look at the image, God here, right, it's an old man with a beard, right, long hair, dressed in white. Is that the concept that most people have about God? Is that the concept that Spiritism teaches us about God? So this is what we're going to do tonight. We're going to look at the Spiritist view or a Spiritist perspective of our God. That is the goal for tonight's activities. So I'm going to start by mentioning Sir Ken Robinson, that talks to us or tell us about a story of a little girl who was in this drawing class, right? And he talks about innovation. He talks about creativity, right? Sir Ken Robinson. And in this classroom, we have this 6-year-old girl that she's drawing, right? Her head's down, and the teacher asked them to do a project or work, and she's drawing. And then when the teacher said, right, hey, little girl, what are you doing? I mean, you're not paying attention to the class. You're not paying attention to what I'm teaching. And then the teacher was still like fascinated, and I said, I mean, what are you drawing? Can I look? Can I see? What are you drawing? And the little girl replied, right, Mrs. So-and-so, I'm drawing God. And the teacher was appalled. She said, but nobody knows what God looks like. And the little girl replied, they will all in a minute. So I want to start by having this story because all of us, we have concepts of what God is, right? When we were kids, we had one idea, right? When we grow up, we have the same idea, right? When we have been taught or we have been told by different religions or by different philosophies out there, right? Usually they associate God with, guess what, right? A bigger, myself, a larger, a stronger, right? And so forth. But is that really the case? Right? Is that really the case? We also heard before, based on even some of the scriptures, right? According to John, that talks about or tells us that Jesus said, I am the Father. I and the Father are one. Jesus said that. Yes, he did. But when you look at this passage, that a lot of our friends, right, throughout Christianity, use that phrase to justify the belief system or the idea that Jesus and God is one person, or Jesus is in fact God. They use this part of the scriptures. The one thing that, right, we're going to use Paul of Tarsus' request is for us to always take the spirit out of the lyrics, out of the letter, right? And in this exact part of the scripture, that, we got to go beyond that, right? So if you look at what John is talking about, right, it's a story that talks about Jesus really going way and beyond to save and to help those sheep, right, that ended up getting lost, right? Him as the really going after those sheep. So this verse itself is just to reiterate, right? It's just to tell again the story that Jesus is fully aligned, right? It's in full comprehension. It's in full alignment with God's plan and purpose for the sheep or for all of us, right? So it's not to say that Jesus and God is the same person. We Spiritists don't agree with that statement, right? Of course, we respect what other folks, believe, obviously, right? But we believe in something else. But what is that something else? What are we talking about here, right? So in order for us to get there, I think it's really important for us to take a look at the perceptions of God through all time. And this is an interesting slide because we have, the Jews, the Hebrews, the Egyptians, and let's start with the Jews, right? So the Jews believed that there's a single God, like monotheistic, right, philosophy or religion. Yes, they did, right? Who not only created us, but also the universe. And by whom, right? Every Jew has the individual relationship, right? So they have the individual relationship between the person and the creator, or the creator and the creature, so to speak, right? They also believe that God continues to work in the world, affecting or really impacting everything that people do, right? So the Jewish relationship with God is covenant, right? It's a very formal relationship. And God is a judge, a lawgiver, right? They also, call him, right? A lawgiver, a liberator, also a creator, a father, a king, right? And a shepherd, right? That's what, our friends, our brothers from the Jewish faith, or our Hebrews, right? Jewish faith, folks, believe. If we look at the Egyptians, right? Much older than that, the Egyptians, they believed in a pantheon of gods, like multiple gods, right? Polytheism, right? Which were involved in every aspect of nature and human society, right? God of thunder, God of sun, God of moon, God of earth, and all these things, right? And they also use, the interesting thing about the Egyptians is they also use pharaohs, right, to act as intermediary between the people, right, the average Joes, and their gods. How interesting that is, right? As we learn with Spiritism, right, that's a type of mediumship which really affords or really helps communicate between folks in this planet, in this realm, with folks that are discarnates or spirits, or in what they believed, right? These deities or gods with lowercase g, right? I'm just looking at the message here on the screen, right? So please, if you have questions, please make sure to send them in, right? Would love to take them as they come. Of course, right? As long as they're part of the what we're talking about here, would love to spend a few minutes and really trying to really bring more ideas or other parts of the talk, right? In order to answer those questions. So feel free to ask them as if you wish. So going back to the perceptions of God with time. Even before that, we have the ancient Greeks, right? They also believed in many gods and many goddesses. Interesting thing, right? So it's both, right? Gods and goddesses. The Greeks believed that these gods and goddesses controlled everything, like everything in their lives. Like, for example, all their destiny, all the things they were supposed to do, and everything, every step of the way, including the environment. Okay, there was a God for every aspect of people's lives, as we learned, right, from the ancient Egyptians scriptures, and it was very important for them to please the gods. They believed that a happy God, right, is a happy God is a helpful God to people, or to us, or to ancient Greeks, so to speak. But here's the caveat: an unhappy God may also punish you. So it's a carrot and a stick, so to speak, right? The concept of a carrot and a stick. Continuing the chronology here, right? The Romans, right? The Romans were very interesting because they thought that their gods were all part of the family and people, right? So they're really together, when it comes to gods and all that. And they told stories to, really pass on the generations, right? So, for example, Zeus, right? The god of Jupiter, if I'm not mistaken, right? And they all also believed that their gods came from Mount Olympus. So for you to be a god, right, you had to really come from Mount Olympus, right? Because that's all they knew, folks, right? And let's go back there time, right? So if you look at the Hindus, right, in Asia, right, our brothers from Hindus, they believed in a universal soul or God that's called Brahman, right? And Brahman takes on many forms that, depending on your Hindu philosophy, there's several philosophies within the Hinduism, right? You worship him as a god or a goddess, right? In their own right. That's why some Hindus believe that cows are sacred. Some other beliefs, the other folks believe that other animals are sacred, the representation of God, and so forth, right? The interesting about that is the Hindus believe that Brahma or God is in everyone. It's inside everyone. So we all have a part of Brahman, right? And then we fast forward to modern times, right? We have the Catholic and the Protestant Christianity, right? The Catholic Church believes that there's one true and living God, the Creator, right, and Lord of heaven and earth, right, which is Jesus, right, the Savior. The Protestant Church, however, calls for a personal relationship with God through Jesus, right, and the Scriptures. So it's a little different interpretation of that. But folks, in a nutshell, right, every culture, every people, there's more, just a few that I was able to really do some research, but there's even more than that, right? Every culture, every people have come up with their own concept of God, right? And we came up with the concept of creation based on our own paradigm, right? Based on our own ways. As I was mentioning before, people usually thought that God was just a bigger self, a bigger, human being, or a bigger man, or a stronger king, or stronger, or taller, heavier, stronger, right? Healthier version of themselves, right? That's why when we talk to a lot of different people, right, the concept of God may change. But let's see some interesting names that are associated with God, so we can continue in this overall research until we find, right, until we arrive at what Spiritism talks to us about God. So, in addition to the Judaism, right, or faith that calls Father or Abba, right, in Hebrew, right, higher self. The Hebrews also called God as Elohim, right, El Shaddai, Yahweh, right, Jehovah, Adonai. There's several names that if you look at the Old Testament, right, or in the Hebrew Bible, we see, right, names like that to call to really describe, right, our God, right. But the common name or the common term that's used, right, within Christianity is either Creator, God, Father, right, Jehovah, and so forth, right. That's the Christianity really understand as that. But of course, if you look at Latin, right, Deus is the word for God in Latin, right. We also have our friends from the Muslim faith. They're called God Allah, right, which is the Arabic word for God. As I mentioned before, Brahma, Redeemer, Jehovah. There are many names, folks, right, that people really call God as, right, as different names. But do the names matter? Do the names matter, right? And that's the question that we like to ask. I would say that no, but let's look at what this interesting philosopher from even before Christ, right, has mentioned. If you may or may not know Epicurus, Epicurus was one of the first philosophers to really write down recipes for food, for dishes, right? So, of course, he was an atheist, right? And but he had great culinary skills, and he was the first one to really drive the concept of recipes, or really writing down recipes for food, for dishes, right? That's why you may even have seen his name and so forth. But Epicurus has an interesting quote that I'd like to bring to you guys, right? He asked the question, if God exists, right, why is there so much suffering then? That's a great question. I mean, that's a valid question, right? If God exists, why is there so much suffering? But then he continues, right? So he goes something like this. If God wants to prevent evil, but he does not succeed, maybe God is not that powerful. Because if he wants to get rid of evil from the world, but he can't, yeah, he might not be that powerful. That's why he really arrived at the conclusion, right? But he says, if he can do it, but won't, maybe it's not that benevolent. Meaning, it's not that great God because he still let people, his people, right? His children suffer, right? But here's the interesting one. If he wants, right? He wants and is not successful, meaning if he wants to get rid of evil, but he cannot do it, right? Why call him God anyways? That's what the argument that Epicurus drove in order to really prove, right, or attest his, atheism, right, concepts. And of course, he goes on and on to the world that God really did not exist. So there are about 5 of the world population today, right, about 400 million people in the world that do not believe in God whatsoever. They believe in other aspects of God, but not in the traditional sense of God. But if we look at history, right, these folks, they've always been there, right? For such a long time, right? We believe that Earth was not rounded, was a squared Earth, right? As a matter of fact, there are some people today, right, in 2020, I believe we call them flat earthers, right? They still believe that you take your ship or your boat, and one time it's going to fall because the ocean's going to end, and then every water's. Look at the picture on the left, right? Or look at the one on the right. Edge of Earth, right? Keep off, and then when you look at that, you can see from underneath, right? Again, these are just examples, right, or really pictures that show that science has really demonstrated and debunked some of these concepts that we still see today commonly in our societies, right? Folks have these belief systems that have been ingrained in their overall, cultures or knowledge that even with science telling us actually, Earth is rounded or oval, so to speak, and all these new developments from science, right? It does not matter, right? These folks are still believing, right, in the philosophies or ideologies from a long, long time ago, including the concept of God, right? There's people that still believe that God is, a king, or God is vengeful, and God is this and that. But I think what's important to mention here, as we do this comparison between historical chronology of events and what we, right, ourselves Spiritists believe, right? I think it's important to mention that despite all these studies, despite all the science trying to demonstrate, right, it's very difficult for some people to come to the realization that they were wrong. It's very, very difficult, right? So, for example, in the next slide, I want to show you, a couple of things that if you, do a basic research, right? And these are some of the books that we have the fortunate pleasure to read. Most of these. There's a study out there of the God particle, right? Again, there's several studies out there, folks, right? There's several experiments that try to really make sense of science, right? Religion. One that I love, absolutely love, is the God experiments by Dr. Gary Schwartz. He really shows or builds a case, a hypothesis, and really proves the hypothesis at the end that science is in fact discovering God in everything, including us, right? And in this book, right, he also talks about the fact that science is not per se religious, but it's not also per se non-religious, right? So if you look at the book on the right, right, by Amir Exel, he argues that science does not disprove God. So neither proves, neither disproves, right? So it tries to really come to some theories and whatnot, right? Again, this has been a study or a field of study for decades, right? Decades ago, right? One of the books that I also recommend that folks that like that type of reading, right? God, the Evidence, The Reconciliation of Faith and Reason in a Post-Secular World, the one that's on top left, right? By Patrick Glenn. Again, amazing literature if you're into reading this type of stuff, right? That really talks about and really makes us wonder, makes us think, right? What is going on in the world with science, religion? Are they aligning? Are they moving, totally separate to each other and all that, right? But Flavio, is this a Spiritist talk, or is this like a scientific view of God's talk? You're right. This is a Spiritist talk. So let me show you a new traffic pattern ahead, right? Let me take a step down and really show you, as we mentioned before, a lot of these past, religions, right, or philosophies or ideologies, they really created, right, a concept of God for themselves. But the interesting thing, if we really analyze critically, right, what these religions are talking about, right, the model oftentimes is very exclusive, meaning a lot of folks believe they were the only ones, right, or the preferred ones to that particular God, right? If you ask the question, what's the most perfect religion out there? What's the most perfect philosophy out there, right? Christianity alone, we have 3,000 different denominations, right? Quoting my beloved father, he says, if you believe that only your religion is going to help you get there, right? You may be playing the lottery, because it's a lot easier to win the lottery than be right out of 3,000 choices, right? It's 3,000 choices just in Christianity alone. Imagine other faiths, right? Imagine other, areas out there. So again, is there a religion per se that's the only one that brings the most important, the only concept of God that, right? Again, what I'm trying to highlight here, folks, is that the model so far has been very exclusive, has been very, hey, it's my way or the highway, right? This is the religion, right? If you don't like it, right? Sorry, you're not going to be saved, right? Sorry, you're not going to go anywhere, right? You have to come and follow us. You have to come and join us. You have to come and really pray the way I do, or have the same faith the way I do, or develop faith in a canonical way the same way I do. But is that the only way to go? Is that, right, the only way to go, right? We should ask that question, because, if we really have the concept that God, as this heavenly father and mother, right, a parent that loves all, its children, all the children the same, he does not love me because I follow Jesus. He does not love so-and-so because that so-and-so follows Muhammad better or more or less. No, it's the same love, folks, right? Religion, as from the Latin, is reconnect, right? The meaning of the word religion is to reconnect with our Creator. And because there are several different types of people, cultures, costumes, habits, rituals, and all that, there are several different types of religions out there, ideologies, philosophies, and all those things, right? So to believe that only one is correct, I think it's a very small way to understand, right, the concept of the creation. Continuing, right? So as we moved from polytheism to monotheism, right, which is the belief of multiple gods, poly, multiple, to mono, one, right? Theism, theos, right, God or deity. Ism, right, the study or the ideology, right? We, right, understand that God should be there for everyone, right, and not for some people only, right? Spiritism came to challenge that perception and to really bring its reason, faith dimension, right? As Kardec used to say, right, the only faith, right, that can really stand humanity in every aspect of its way is the reason faith, right? The faith that's based on reason, on science, on really our rationalization behind what we learn, what we read, right, and so forth. Kardec himself always welcomed people to ask questions, people to participate, people to think critically. Does this make sense? He used to say in the Spiritist magazine several times, areas to say, don't believe what I'm saying. Don't believe what the spirits are saying. Go and test it out for yourself. Go and make sure that this makes sense to you, to all of us. This reasonable or this reasoned faith, or this critically thinking idea that, yeah, I get it, but I don't really get the whole thing, the whole concept. Maybe I need to learn more. Maybe I need to study more. Maybe I need to ask more questions. So he welcomed people to do that, right? And by doing that, Spiritism gives us a different, way. He invites us to look at God, right, very differently, right? Not in this anthropomorphic. Oh, it's a very difficult word, right? Anthropos, right? Humanity or humankind. Morphic form, right? Anthropomorphic, the form of a human being, right? This anthropomorphic way. But instead, looking at God in a slightly different way, right? Let's get there. So when we opened, right, the Spirit's book, Allan Kardec talks about, the introduction and the prologue and all that, but when he starts asking or really cataloging the questions with the spirits, right, the first one right? The first one that he talks about, right, is what is God. And I'm going to take a pause here, right? Because including Epicurus, including a lot of the philosophers, including a lot of the atheists, right? The main reason why they don't believe in God is because they don't believe in a God that's just like us, that's made with flesh, right? Even if it, the whole Jesus concept, they just throw it out, right? Because they understand with science that it's impossible, right? It's impossible for some like us, right, to do all these great things, right? Create the universe and all those things. We're gonna get there in a minute, but so Allan Kardec used the pronoun "what" as opposed to "who," because had he asked the question "who is God," what would he be assuming, right? Or there's a presumption that there will be a human being, a person. Who is this or who is that? Instead, he asks, "What is God?" And the spirits phenomenally answered, right? With God being the supreme intelligence, the first cause of all things. Meaning the supreme intelligence, right? We are intelligent beings, of course we are, right? We make things, we create things, and we make things happen and all that. So we're intelligent beings, but there's a supreme intelligence. Supreme means at the top. There's nothing beyond that. It's the top of the top. The creme de la creme, right? Or the supreme intelligence, right? And they continue. First cause of all things. And that's an important differentiation because the whole idea of supreme intelligence has been, fostered, has been really shared out there by other philosophers, but not with the connection of the first cause of all things. And the reason why we understand they did that, right, is because, again, as I mentioned before, people always thought about God as a person. Look at the picture again, right? It's Jesus on the left, God on the right. It's an old man, white beard, right? Long hair. But guess what? Right? Let's juxtapose, 2020, right? People may ask the question, why is it a white man? Why is it a man? Right? Why is it a person? Well, again, right? I mean, some people believe that Jesus was darker skin. Or again, when we look into those things, it's important to critique and to question and to discuss these topics, folks, right? Because it gives us really feel for our minds for us to not stay stuck, right, in one definition only and go beyond that, right? So that's why it's really, really important to do that. So Kardec made a very interesting comment, right? After that really highlights the importance of using, right, the pronoun "what" as opposed to "who." He wrote that in his book called Posthumous Works, right? And he shared that the idea that the reason why he asked the question "what," right, is because he didn't want to assume anything. He did not want to assume anything, right? Again, based on his, of course, we now know that his knowledge, his background and expertise, right, really gave us that. But as I mentioned the picture of Jesus, I think it's also important for us to compare, right? What are we talking about here with Jesus? And Allan Kardec asked the spirits, what is the most perfect standard that God has offered to humankind as a model and guide? Right? If there's a standard or mold, I mean, if there's a mold, what do I follow, right? What's my compass? What's my GPS, right? And this is the shortest answer from the Spirit's book, by the way. Jesus, that's it, right? If you're looking for the model of, a guide and model for humankind, that's Jesus. And as we learn through Spiritism, right, Jesus was the most evolved spirit that has inhabited Earth, right? But he's a spirit just like us. He's not a God. He's not somebody that's, preferred by the Creator. No. God loves him the same way that God loves us. Yes, you heard me right. God loves Jesus the same way that God loves us. Because guess what, right? God does not love one son or one daughter more than the other. Correct? And if Jesus is also a spirit like ourselves, he just made a lot better decisions long time ago, right? And we're still getting there. Well, we're going to get there, right? All of us will get there, right? So there's a question here that shows, why would someone start believing in God? Why should someone start believing in God, right? Again, don't know what's the context of the question, but the idea that I can think of is it's a lot easier to believe in God than to not believe in God to start off, right? Two, we're going to get there in a minute. When we get to the idea of how do we really prove the existence of God, right? If you're a critical thinker and you really, really make the journey, right, to get there, to get to destination, I mean, it's impossible not to believe in God, right? Because things start to lose sense of it. But if you believed in a God like, our predecessors or, ancient times, right? With all the knowledge, all the scientific experiments, all the background that we have today, it's very difficult to maintain that belief unless you depart from science, right? And that's the beauty that I believe Spiritism brings to us, because it aligns science and these religious, philosophies, right? It really merges or moves together, right? So again, back to the Jesus question, right? When God offers him as the model and guide, right? Or what is thought about the purest expression of God's law, right? Because guess what, right? He's just like us. He's not divine. No, he's not. He's just like us, right? He's a spirit like us. But God gave us the opportunity to use Jesus, right, as a teacher. I call him my teacher, right? I call Jesus my teacher, right? Because he's there, my mentor, my guide, right? Because he's there for me all the time. If I have a question, I talk to him on my prayers, right? I talk to him when I'm taking a shower, right? It's the perfect time to do a prayer, because what else can you do when taking a shower, right? There's nothing else you can do. So again, Spiritism debunked all these formal relationships that a lot of these ancient religions, right, had when it comes to really connecting with God, connecting with with our Creator, right? It's an interesting one. But the question I have for all of you is, does God know me, or does God know you? So going back to that question, right? Why should someone start believing in God, right? The hypothesis that I'm really raising here is that God knows you. God knows every single issue that you're going through right now, right? God knows how you're feeling. God knows what you're doing right now, right? God knows all those things that are happening to you. Does God direct your activities? Does God really, well, that's a different way of interpreting God, right? Because if that was the case, we would not have free will. We would not be able to really act based on our own, right? Our free will and wishes and whatnot. But for us to really solidify this one, I'd like to tell a story that I think it really falls very well here, right? So about a year and a half ago, I moved. I used to live in the Boston area, and we moved to the north part of the state, like Massachusetts. We live in Andover, Mass now. And I was hungry. We were just moving boxes and all that. And I was looking to get a pizza, right? Hey, let's get a pizza because I'm not going to cook. And I look at my wife, even though we love to cook, but all these boxes, we don't know what the plates are. If you guys have moved before, you know how it is, right? It's really difficult. So you know what? Let's get a pizza. But so you know what? Oh, we don't know pizza places here. And we live in the suburbs now. I mean, it's not like we go to a downtown that we just don't know where it is, right? So hey, I have an idea. Let's get my smartphone. Let's look for pizza places online, right? Of course. So we pull it up, Google Maps, pizza places, or Yelp, right? Google pizza places. And we found this great Italian pizza shop, right? In North Andover. They had an amazing Italian margarita, right? So we ate and all that. But the interesting thing is, when we were researching for that, right? All of our cell phones, folks, if you have a smartphone, all of our cell phones has something in them called an IP address, okay? And that IP address is almost like a social security or an address, right? That has all your information, right? Your address, right? Where you are, location, what you've done, and all those things. And the more interesting thing about that is he knows exactly within about 6 to 12 feet your location. So when you do a location, the system, right? The network knows exactly where you are with the 6 to 12 feet, right? A margin, right? So when I did that, it found all these pizza places, right? But then the question I have for you is, if a smartphone, right, knows exactly where I am, if a smartphone knows, right, what do I need? If a smartphone knows about that, let's just imagine about God, the supreme intelligence, right? Again, humans created smartphone. Humans created the apps, the software, the programs, the networking, TCP/IP, and all those things, right? We created all that. But God is the supreme intelligence. He can do way more things, right, than humans can do. So if our phones know where we are, or know about us, or know us, imagine our God, right? Really imagine our God. So when I look at that, I think it's important to leverage one psalm, right? Because when King David, right, was having the same understanding of the same discoveries, right? He did not have a smartphone, no Wi-Fi, no internet. Even though he got the concept that God knows us, he really, really mastered the concept that God really knows us very deeply. He really does, right? And if folks don't know, right, the Psalms, right, there are about 150 Psalms in the Hebrew Bible, right? It's the really common liturgies, right, histories, and they're really meant to be songs, right? And of course, there's folks that may know, folks that may not know them, right? But King David wrote 100 of the 150 Psalms, right? So imagine if King David was, an artist today, he would have recorded more songs or more albums than Elvis Presley, so to speak, right? So it was very popular, right, back that time. So this one in particular, right, is a psalm that he used to sing, because psalms were meant to be sung, right, to be sang by folks in the synagogues and the temples, right? This one in particular goes like this, right? Oh Lord, you have searched me and known me. When King David prayed to God, right, he had a personal knowledge. He understood that God has a personal knowledge about David, about human beings, right? And this one here is a great example of it, right? It's not just say that God knows everything, but God knows me. It's not just say that God's everywhere, but God is here. He's inside of me. He's with me. Okay? It's not just say that God created everything. Yes, he did, but he created me too. He's my creator, right? And then he continues, you know my sitting down and my rising up. So King David used this proverbial phrase, sitting out, going down, right, to really highlight the fact that God knew everything about him. Every single thing, right? Most everyday things, or as Jesus would say later, I believe it's Matthew 10, 30, if I'm not mistaken, right? God knows the number of our hairs that are in our head. God knows that too. Folks, he's a supreme intelligence. He knows everything, right? Then he continues, you understand my thought afar off. What does it mean by that, right? God, I can only imagine that God not only knew the smallest aspects of David's everyday life, but also he knew his thoughts. Yes, folks, God knows what we're thinking, right? God knows the words that we're going to say before we do. There's nothing on us, there's nothing about us that's hidden, right? That's not known by the all-knowing God, as Dave wrote, right? So here's my question for you, right? Does that bother you? The fact that God knows every word before you say. The fact that God knows if you're going to sit down, you're going to leave, you're going to walk, you're going to sit down, you're going to sleep, you're going to wake up, you're going to do this, you're going to... Here's my answer to that question, right? If you're really disciples or students of Jesus, right, I think it's really important for us to understand this concept, because God knowing that everything that we do, God knowing every action, everything that comes out of our mouths, our actions, our emotions, and all that, I think it's important for us to understand that, right? As Jesus followers, like we all are. Otherwise, we could have been doing something else, right? It's Friday evening. We could have been somewhere else, but we decided to be here, right? Studying about God. It's important for us to do that, to understand that, right? So every time a non-pure speech comes out, oops, God knows what I said. God knows if I use some profanity, if I did not treat my brothers or sisters the way I should be treating and all that, right? He continues. You have hedged me behind and before. Look at that, right? You have hedged me behind and before. What does that mean, right? The normal sense, folks, in the Bible of the word, hedging is a protective barrier, right? Really insulated, right? So God helped King David on every side. Imagine, like, every side. If you look at the Jewish candelabro, right? The name, escaped my mind, right? The Jewish candelabro has 7 candles. And the reason for 7 candles is because, guess what, right? God knows what's up, what's down from me, what's ahead, right? What's behind, right? What's inside, what's around, right? So it's all these 7 places. God knows everything. And those 7 places, right? Right? It's exactly left, right, forward, backward, up, down, and inside. Those 7 places, those 7 sides, God hedges us, right? God really does. He really protects us, right? So that makes us more comfortable, way more comfortable, right? So the way, or the reason why somebody should believe in God is because there's a comforting message that if God's on my side, I can do anything, right? I can do. Jesus even told us, right? You are gods, lowercase g, right? You are also gods. You can do whatever I did and much more. Right? And then, of course, King David finishes here, right? Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. Meaning, the knowledge that God knows about all these things, that is all by our side, that understands what I need, that gets the idea that what Flavio needs is X, Y, Z, right? That helps me get there, does not interfere with what I have to do. Folks, this is there. There's nothing new here. This was written thousands of years ago, right? So the idea is, this is really comforting, right? I'm always amazed when I go back to the Psalm, right? To that knowledge, that really comprehension, right? It's even beyond my imagination, right? That's what we get from understanding, right? Using the Psalm as the component there. But if I look at this beautiful picture, right? What do I see? What do I see with this beautiful picture, right? In the past, as I mentioned before, we looked to make sense of God as a bigger us, or a stronger king, or a stronger fighter, and all that. That's how we were able to make sense of the Creator, right? We could not really get to a conclusion, right? But today we can, right? Thanks to Spiritism, that really opens our eyes. We can, right? Not only open your eyes to appreciate a beautiful picture like this, but if I look, for example, right, to prove the existence of God, look at this answer from the Spirit's book that Kardec received, right? There's no effect without a cause. Search the cause of whatever is not the work of a man, and the reason will furnish the answer to your question, right? So, again, the idea here, folks, is, of course, we can create something. We can build a chair, we can build a house, we can build a bridge, but we cannot create other human beings. Yeah, we can, from the sense of course, right? But we cannot create a flower, beautiful flowers like this, right? So if we use this axiom that's very common in our sciences today, right? No effect without a cause, no intelligent effect without intelligent cause, and that it helps us really make sense of God, right? It really does. But if you still have doubts, which I'm sure some people may do, right? Look at the perfection of our human body in full harmony with all of its organs, right? So human body is the most complex, the most interesting, the most perfect machine that has ever been created. Flavio, but I'm sick. I get, right? Sometimes that's what happens. Those things happen, right? But it doesn't really diminish the fact that the human body is the most perfect machine that has ever been created. Okay? So when we look at that, these beautiful twins, right? Inside a woman's womb, right? It really helps us really start making a different sense when we look at the word, God, creator, right? And all that, right? If we move forward, again, the question that Kardec was amazing because he knew what questions to ask, right? And he asked the spirits, will we ever be able to fathom, understand, or comprehend, grasp the mystery of the divinity, right? Meaning, can we comprehend that, right? So in the same way that I showed you the picture before, imagine if your 3-year-old kid, daughter or son, comes to you and say, Papa, right? How did I come to, how was I born? Of course, you can say, yeah, mommy and daddy got together and this, or mommy and daddy, you can try to explain, but that 3-year-old does not have the intellectual or the emotional intelligence to comprehend, right? Science, biology, right? Reproduction and all that, right? It's the same way with us, folks, right? We don't have ways to comprehend, right? With our very limited mind, right? So the spirits responded to Kardec that's actually that can happen, right? When our minds are when really we're not obscured, our minds are not obscured by matter. What does that mean? When we're back into the spirit world, right? We'll start to have an idea, right? A better idea. We'll fathom, right? The mystery of the divinity, so to speak. But the interesting thing is, this is not news, right? This is not a product, so to speak, of Spiritism. Because look at this quote from Sir William Shakespeare, right? He's telling Horatio, dude, right? There's so many things here. You just can't make sense of all this, man. I mean, it's impossible, right? We don't have a way to do that. We don't have a way to do that, right? So forget about, we just don't. We can't, right? This is very difficult for us to grasp, right? So between heaven and earth, there's so many more things that we can really think about, right? That's exactly the analogy that I want to make with God, the creation, right? The universe. It's just we don't have the language, the skills, the capabilities, the intellectuals, and of course the list goes on and on to comprehend all that thing, right? But as we approach to the end of our activity here, right? I also like to flush one more thing, right? Because people may be asking, hey, what do I want to do? Does God, what do I have to please God, or do I have to, do something? As I mentioned before, right? We learned through Spiritism that God knows about all of us. God knows what we need, right? Even though God does not interfere, we have to do, but God knows exactly what we need. God knows exactly what's better for us, right? What's best for us. So it's really important for us to understand the concept in a very different way, right? Because when you look at this quote from Jesus, according to Matthew, right? If therefore you are offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother has anything against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go your way. First, be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift. When you look at this, folks, right? It's call to action. It's a call to action for us not to be stuck with these definitions from the past, that we have to go out there and really pay promises. We have to go out there and do this. We have to go out there and really, give gifts to God or to the deities, and right, like the ancient Greeks and Egyptians used to do, right? It's not that different from early Christianity, right? As folks really understood the Christ's message in a different way, right? But what's important for us to look at here, folks, is that the message that we learn through Spiritism is a different message, right? It's a message that it doesn't matter even if you don't say you believe in God, right? What really matters, right, is how you act, is how you really understand life, right? What really matters is what you do to others. What really matters, right, is what the teachings that we learn through Spiritism, right? Look at these pictures, right? One child helping another tie the shoelaces, right? And when we're kids, most kids, of course, not every kid, but most kids, right, they help each other. Most kids are very altruistic. They want to make sure that everybody's okay, right? They want to make sure that all their friends and all that, they're in good shape, right? So that's the message, folks. That is the message, right? I have a question here that reads, can someone believe in God but not attend a church or a center? Absolutely, right? Attending a church or a center just gives me better access to content, to resources, to people, tools, right? The vehicle for us to make sense of God, so to speak. But imagine if you live in a very distant part of the world, right? Without a church or a temple or nothing around you. So does God love you more than loves that person that's there, that's secluded? No, right? It doesn't matter, right? Of course, it helps if you go. It helps if you do attend, because from there, your misconceptions are going to be challenged. Your ideas are going to be challenged, right? You're going to be invited to really move out of the status quo, to really understand things in a different way, to think critically, at least in the Spiritism, how we can say that very loud and clear, right? It's an invitation for us to think critically. And by doing that, our comprehension level broadens. By doing that, by engaging in these, study groups, by engaging in these sessions, right? The way we look at things, the way we look at God, the way we look at life, the way we look at charity, right? It's very different. As Allan Kardec himself suggested that without charity, there's no salvation. I absolutely love that quote, because had he said without the church or without Jesus, without this, there's no salvation, without the truth, right? I'll be very leery. I'll be very careful, because that thing can change, right? Costumes may change, philosophies may change, religions change, and all these things change, right? But he said the word charity. That doesn't change. That unites us all, folks. That brings everybody together, right? Christians, Muslims, atheists, doesn't matter what you call yourself, what we call ourselves. It brings us all together, because it is, right, part of our job to help our fellow human beings, right? It is part of our job to really do that, right? I love a word, I believe it's Swahili, right, called Ubuntu, right? That word, it's oftentimes translated into humanity, but it's much more than that, right? It's the collectiveness of humanity. It's the collectiveness of all of us together, right? Living together, moving together, progressing together, right? In this journey together. Because guess what? Even though we are responsible to arrive to destination by ourselves, right? We have folks that they're there with us. Folks that are in this journey with us, right? Our spouses, right? Our kids, our friends, our neighbors, right? Folks that we believe we meet in the church, in the center. All these folks are together with us. And that word Ubuntu means it's the collectiveness, right? That makes the whole. And that word is so beautiful, right? It comes back to what I just mentioned here, right? Because what we've learned in the past was a God that's separated, right? If you don't believe, if you're not part of these people, right? You're not my children. If you're those people, right? I couldn't care less about you. But Spiritism changes all that. It really brings a God that's encompassive, a God that really sees everybody the same, including people that don't even say they believe in God. To me, this is amazing, folks, right? Because it really changes the paradigm. It changes the perception, right? And as I mentioned before, when you look at a picture like this, right? It's a call to action. It's a call to action for us. Of course, we have to study. Of course, we have to learn. Of course, we have to acquire knowledge. But the most important part of the life of a Christ disciple or a Christ student is action, right? Is out there on the forefront, helping those in need, right? Extending a hand when somebody needs some help. Really going out there and really against or helping those that are oppressed, those that are excluded, right? Those that are there, that most people don't even look at them. That's the Christ's message. That's the message that Christ left that got lost throughout the years, right? I have not come for those who are not sick, he said. For I have come for those who are sick and in need. So if you really want to behave or really live your life the way Christ did, look for those that have some needs, right? Look for those around you that are in dire need. I'm not suggesting only financial needs, monetary needs. Folks, we can do a lot of things, sometimes with a phone call. We can pick up the phone right now after we hung up here and call that friend or relative, the brother or sister that we haven't spoken in years, and say, you know what, dude, I'm sorry. I messed up. I'm sorry, I really hope that you can forgive me. I really hope that you can do this. I really hope that we can go back to doing that. Because, folks, what matters is how we treat each other. What matters is this God that's inside of us, right? That's really feeling our emotions, our wishes, our desires, right? To transform the world into a better world. And as we all live through these COVID times, there are no better times than this to do this in our own homes, with our loved ones, with those that are with us 24 hours a day, right? I know it can be challenging. I know we can. But if our houses, our homes, are the best places that we can be, people around us are those spirits, the best spirits that can be with us, folks, we have everything in our fingertips for us to do better, for us to live happier, healthier lives. We just have to think critically, open these eyes, maybe leave behind some concepts, some old ideologies, understand what we learned through Spiritism, and just leverage that, right? As this tool belt that a tradesman or a tradesperson need to use to fix a hole in the wall, change the receptacle of the light, or anything, any kind of work, right? So whatever we need to do, any work that we decide to do, charitable work, assist, whatever it is we need to do, Spiritism gives us some guidelines that can help us get to the finish line quicker and more effectively, more efficiently. And align that with the concept of God. That's a God of mercy, a God that is just, a God that's sovereignly good, that never abandons us, that gives us everything that we need to do better, to do more, to live healthier and happier lives. That's the calling, folks. That's the message, right? So with that, I think we've reached time, Marcio. I believe there's another question here. I think we've already answered all those, but if there's other questions, be more than happy to go over them, right? If not, folks, it's been a pleasure, right? I really hope that in a short, maybe in a given time, not too far away, we'll get to do this in person again. I'm sure we will, right? But meanwhile, before that, we truly hope that this has been helpful for all of us to have a different conception of God, right? And also, what's really important for us to do, it's not to really have this God that's very distant from us, but the God that's here, that's inside of us at every single time. Back to you, Marcel.
Thank you, Flavio. That's fantastic. It's such a enlightening and intriguing, interesting topic that in Spiritism we should not forget to learn about God and learn as much as we can. And lectures like this one help us really to understand and see how God is close to us. I have to admit to you and confess that you brought up one of my favorite Psalm 139. It's a fantastic one. So I really, really liked that one. And we didn't, of course, you didn't tell me that you're going to talk about it, but when you were showing that and explaining and going through it, I was just, amazed how these words are really, really powerful.
They are powerful. Yeah, indeed.
And thank you for taking time and being with us. It's a fantastic. We had some people watching us from US and also from Brazil. So
Okay.
and we thank people that ask questions. So those questions were anonymous. So people weren't that comfortable putting their name there, but they asked the question. They sent me here, and I have to retype to you, so you were able to see. So that's a great opportunity for addressing somebody's questions, and those are legitimate questions too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's great. And
Absolutely.
as that, we would like to close and invite everyone so we can unite our thoughts again and say to our Father who is in heaven, hallowed be your name, and we thank you for all the opportunities we have to evolve. We thank God for all the help we receive, for our house when many are living on the streets, for our family and friends when many are alone. But we ask you, Father, to help us understand that we are all brothers and sisters, and we should give to our neighbor without expecting anything in return, so we can understand the law of love, and once for all, we can have inside us that we belong to the same family. We are all your children, and you love us all without any favors. God, continue to bless this planet, the whole humanity, this whole universe, and we may all live in peace. So, with that, we thank you, Flavio, once again, and
Thank you.
for everyone watching from home or wherever you are watching. Um, Thank you for following us, and you are again invited to for next time that we are online in virtual broadcasting one of these lectures. We have these lectures the first Friday of every month. So thank you, and we see each other in another opportunity.
Okay, God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you.